He had just been publicly humiliated at work, in front of his entire team. His hands were shaking, his jaw was tight, and he said nothing, not because he was weak, not because he didn't care, but because something inside him had permanently shifted, and that shift, that almost invisible change, is what we're going to talk about today. Welcome back if you're new here. This channel is about the ancient philosophy of Stoicism, not as theory, as a way of living. In this video, I'm going to show you something that most self-help content completely misses. Mental strength doesn't look like winning. It doesn't look like confidence or power or having all the answers. It looks like small, quiet changes in how you respond to the world. Changes so subtle. You might be experiencing them right now and not even realize it. We're going to cover 3 of these signs in depth today. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to recognize when your mind is becoming something the ancient Stoics would have recognized immediately. Stay until the end, because the 3rd sign is the one most people completely overlook. Here's a story in the early 1940s. A psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl was taken from his home in Vienna. He was put in a Nazi concentration camp. He lost almost everything: his wife, his manuscripts, his freedom. And yet, in the middle of all of that suffering, he made one observation that changed the course of modern psychology. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, that pause, that is where mental strength actually lives. But here's the problem, and this is the part that almost nobody talks about. Most of us in America today have been trained to believe that strength means boldness. It means speaking up, fighting back, never backing down. We grew up watching movies where the strong man always wins the argument, always has the last word. So when we start developing real mental strength, when we start pausing before we react, walking away from arguments we could easily win, letting insults pass without response, we think something is wrong with us. We think we're becoming passive, weak, a pushover, but we're not. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world during his time as Roman emperor, wrote in his private journals about struggling with exactly this. He would be disrespected, challenged, mocked behind his back, and his answer wasn't retaliation. His answer was discipline. His answer was this: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. So if you've been wondering lately why you're reacting less, why things that used to consume you just don't anymore, I want you to stay with me, because what you're about to hear might be the most accurate description of what's happening inside you that you've ever encountered. Before I continue, a study from the American Psychological Association found that 77% of people experience physical symptoms caused by stress regularly. 77%. That means the vast majority of the people watching this right now are being physically destroyed by their own reactions, and most of them will never connect that to what I'm about to tell you. Sign number 1. Here's the first sign, and it's subtle enough that most people mistake it for something else entirely. You start to lose the need to justify your choices. Not because you've become arrogant, not because you don't care what people think, but because you've begun to understand something Marcus Aurelius understood intimately. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. There's a moment, and if you've had this, you'll know exactly what I mean, where someone challenges your decision. Maybe it's a career change, a relationship you ended, a belief you've adopted, and instead of doing what you used to do, defending yourself, building your case, trying to make them understand, you just let it go, not out of defeat, out of clarity, because you've realized something the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. Some things are in your power, most things are not. Other people's opinions, not in your power. Your own actions, completely in your power. The mentally weak person exhausts themselves managing other people's perceptions. They spend their energy building an image. They live in constant anxiety about being misunderstood. But the person becoming mentally strong has quietly stopped caring about that performance. They've accepted that some people are not going to understand, and that's fine. Their peace of mind is no longer a hostage to someone else's approval. Here's what this looks like in real life. Someone criticizes a decision you made. You used to launch into a 3-paragraph defense. Now you say, "I hear you," and you move on. Not passive, not defeated, anchored. The Stoics had a word for this, Apatheia, not apathy, don't confuse them. Apatheia is the freedom from destructive emotions, the ability to remain undisturbed. Epictetus, who was literally born a slave and became one of the most respected philosophers in all of Rome, said this: "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." When you stop needing others to validate your path, that's not weakness. That is the beginning of real freedom. If that sign resonated with you, if you've noticed yourself becoming less reactive lately, drop the word Stoic in the comments right now. I read every single one. And if this video is adding value to your life, a like takes 2 seconds and it helps this content reach more people who need it. Number 2. Remember at the beginning of this video the man who said nothing, who stood still while his body told him to explode. This is what he had learned. The second sign of growing mental strength is this: you stop immediately reaching for an escape. When you're uncomfortable, your old self would immediately reach for something: the phone, the food, the drink, the argument. Anything to dissolve the feeling and make it stop. But something has changed. Now you sit with it. Not because you enjoy pain, but because you've learned that the discomfort is trying to tell you something. This is exactly what the Stoics practiced through a discipline called negative visualization, voluntarily imagining difficulty, loss, and hardship, not to suffer unnecessarily, but to build the muscle that says, "I can handle this." Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome and a philosopher who wrote more about poverty than most poor men ever did, once fasted for days voluntarily. He slept on the floor. He wore rough clothing, not because he had to, but because he wanted to know with certainty that discomfort couldn't own him. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare. This is not a punishment but a tonic. Now you don't need to sleep on the floor." But think about this in modern terms. You have a hard conversation you've been avoiding for 6 months. The old you kept delaying it, anything to avoid the anxiety. The new you schedules it, not because you're not afraid, but because you've learned that the anticipation of pain is almost always worse than the pain itself. This is huge. This is genuinely one of the most life-altering shifts a person can make. Because when you're no longer controlled by the need to escape discomfort, when you can sit in an uncomfortable silence, have a difficult conversation, endure a hard season without falling apart, your options in life multiply. You start taking risks you wouldn't have taken before. You say the hard thing that needs to be said. You walk away from comfort that was quietly destroying you. And all of that is only possible because you have learned to stay when everything in your nervous system is screaming at you to run. Now here's the part most people get completely wrong, and it's the reason most people think they've failed, even when they're actually succeeding. Sign number 3. The biggest reveal. Here's what nobody in the self-help world will say to you: growing stronger hurts. Not the romantic kind of hurt, not the movie version, the real kind where you look at who you used to be and feel a kind of grief. You'll miss the version of yourself that was angry, because at least anger felt like power. You'll miss the drama, because drama at least felt like significance. You'll grieve the relationships that couldn't grow with you. You'll lose people who loved your old patterns, because those patterns served them. And in those moments, most people conclude they've made a mistake. They return to chaos because it feels familiar. But here's what the Stoics understood. And this is the insight that will stay with you long after this video ends. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius, the grief you feel when you outgrow your old self is not a sign that you've lost something precious. It's confirmation that the growth is real. Think about it this way. A tree in a storm doesn't stand still because it's stubborn. It bends, it strains, and if its roots are deep enough, it survives. Mental strength isn't the absence of pain, it's the decision made again and again every single day that the pain will not have the final word. Remember what I said at the very beginning of this video, that man in the office who said nothing, who stood still when his body wanted to explode. He told me later that in that moment all he felt was grief, grief that he'd spent so many years reacting, grief for the relationships he'd damaged before he understood this. But he also told me something else. He said, "It was the first moment in my life I felt like I actually owned myself. That is the destination, not perfect peace, not zero emotion, ownership. Most people will never reach it, not because they can't, but because they don't recognize it when they're standing inside it. You're here, you've watched this far. That tells me something about you. Let's bring it home. 3 signs you are becoming mentally strong. Signs most people miss. 1. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. 2. You can sit in discomfort without immediately reaching for an escape. 3. You feel the grief of growth, and you keep going anyway. These aren't dramatic transformations, they're quiet ones, and that's exactly why they matter. The Stoics believed that the ultimate measure of a person was not their success in the world. It was their capacity to remain themselves, unshaken, in the middle of it. You're closer to that than you think. If this video made you see yourself differently, even just for a moment, hit like right now. 2 seconds. It means everything. Subscribe to this channel. I post every week, and next week we're covering something that directly follows this. Why the Stoics believed suffering was the fastest path to wisdom. You won't want to miss it. And tell me in the comments, which of these 3 signs hit you hardest? Which one are you living right now? I'll see you in the next one.